Welcome to the Awaken on Purpose podcast, where each week I share insight, inspiration, and advice for quantum leaping into new levels of expansion in your purpose and mission as a visionary leader and wayshower. You'll also hear from other new paradigm leaders who share their inspirational stories and wisdom. If you're passionate about embodying your highest destiny and leading others through this great awakening into the next golden age, this show is for you. Hi, everyone. I'm thrilled to welcome to the show today Alana Warlop. She is a spiritual psychotherapist, intuitive, and transformational coach with a Bachelor of Arts in Psychology Wellness from University of Denver, a Master's in Transpersonal Psychology from Naropa University, and a Somatic Trauma, we're off to a great start today, Trauma Specialist certification from Trauma Dynamics in Boulder, Colorado. Alana has knowledge and expertise to share on some of today's most timely personal development topics. Oh my goodness. It's
that Neptune in the air.
Now that I have your introduction out, welcome.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here, Jennifer.
It's so great to have you. And I mean, there's so much that I want to unpack with you, but I would love for you to share with us, what inspired you to this path?
That's a great question, because quite honestly, I don't think I've ever felt that I haven't been on this path. I think there's certain things that just come to you in your life, and you don't know how to do anything else. That's sort of how my path with this has all began when I was really young, starting around, I guess 14 years old. I would say I'd had my first spiritual awakening, where I was at a Episcopalian led retreat that was kind of run by kids and peers. And I had been raised Roman Catholic, but I was off on this retreat, and for the first time in my life felt this massive divine force running through my body, and I was just crying and shaking with love. And that was such an epiphany to me, and I finally could understand what the Catholic Church was trying to tell me about, but I never connected that with Catholicism. So from that moment, when you have this template that kind of arrives, or this like sensation or feeling in my body that was like, so out of this world, I then felt like I just want to go back to that. Like, what was that? How do I get there? Is that God? Is God outside of me? Is that inside of me? Is it a he? Is it a she? All these like teenage questions that you're asking. And so I had always just had this propensity for like seeing beyond the veil. I knew there was energy, and there was more, and there was things you couldn't see. And so I found myself around 17 years old with one of my school counselors. And at the time, just kind of, again, having like, teenage girl issues, and seeing the counselor, and she was like, Alana, I think what you really need is just some energy work. And she was a Reiki master and a healer and a therapist. She was this amazing woman. And I was like, okay, I don't know what that is, but let's do that. Sure. And she's like, it's energy work. And I was like, ooh, does it have to do with energy? Like, wow, cool. Okay. So she would give me Reiki sessions, and I would go see her. And then I ended up doing my senior project with her, in which I led a retreat for the senior girls transitioning into college. We did, shamanic drumming. We did an ice jumping in we lived in New Hampshire. So it was like we jumped in this cold lake, and then got in the sauna, and we had sharing circles. And during that time too, she decided that she's like, I've never done this before, but what if we do Reiki on you every day for your entire senior project? And I was like, I'm on board, So we ended up having this experience where she would give me Reiki every day. And then after about a week or so, or two, I think maybe 2, even 3 weeks, it was a few months long, we'd start writing down what we saw. And this was such a pivotal moment for me. It was like a riff in my reality where I would write down something and she would write down something. We wouldn't talk about it. And then we'd read each other what we saw during the session or what happened. And it was the same, like, with little variations, but we were seeing the same visions. We were attuning our fields and healing. She was doing healing work with me, and I was starting to discover things like chakras, things that I had never heard about. I'd never heard about a chakra. I didn't know what that was, right? But I said, there's these spinning balls of like energy, and they keep going around. I'm trying to move them. I'm trying to put them together or push them away. And she's like, have you ever heard of a chakra? And I was like, no, what's that? So she gave me my first book on chakras. So when you have like a very real time felt sense experience of something before you have the knowledge, that it's truth, right? Like there's nothing that's more that like brings out our intelligence more than felt sense experience. When we experience something, we know truth, right? So I was just always at the right time and the right place, I guess, to kind of receive that soul mission. I didn't know what the hell was happening to me at the time, because at that age, that was like the 90s. It was like, we have no internet, we have no cell phones. Like, I found a Reiki training and I drove my mom's car to that Reiki training, and I didn't tell her what it was. She didn't know, I just kind of like disappeared for a weekend, and then it just like spawned on this deep desire I loved psychology, loved it. Oh my God, I thought the mind was like fascinating, and I just like couldn't do anything else, so I studied that at University of Denver, and I was the first person to graduate from their wellness program. They had this new wellness minor, and I was like, oh, yes, that's why I'm going there. So I kind of invented it on my own, not their program. They didn't know what they were doing, and neither did I. So I just sort of made it up. But I got to study with Reiki masters and yoga and meditation at the time, and they just gave me credit for it. It was like awesome. And there were periods of my life too, after college, I just had, or during college and after college, I had these really karmic, hard experiences, and that's when I had to go through some of my bigger traumas, abusive relationship. My father very tragically passed away in an accident, and these were just, he was like an extremely important person to me. We were very close. It was just a heart-wrenching thing. And as I was kind of shattering with self-esteem and, my sense of security, safety, what I thought was, this kind of pristine bubble, the world, it got, it got real. And again, like, there's nothing more that allows us to step on our path than when we are in pain. Pain really teaches us how to find the pleasure again, right? If we so choose. So I spent a lot of years, happy but half numb, right?
Yeah.
Skiing in Colorado and partying and seeing lots of live music and, having a blast. But I seemingly on the outside was having a blast. And on the inside, just so shut down. I had never learned to talk about emotions. I never cried. It was a very, there was a lot of repression there. So eventually I kind of hit a point where that was clashing in my life. I had a relationship of 7 years that I just left because I was having panic attacks when he asked me to marry him. And I was like, that can't be good. It can't be good when you have a panic attack when someone asks you to marry them, And And I just saw the stagnation in my life, and I remembered that feeling, that those feelings of like being so in love with God and life. And I was like, where did that go?
Yeah.
It's almost like at like 28 years old, I was trying to get back to where I was at 15 or 14. Those like those otherworldly, I don't know, just existential experiences. And I had always been attracted to going to Naropa. This is I got my master's degree for transpersonal psychology there. And this is a very unique university. So when I arrived there, I had broken up with my partner of 7 years. I had never fully grieved my father. I just kind of got into a relationship instead and fell in love. And so I really had a break at Naropa, but in the most held and perfect environment, because I was, learning therapy, getting therapy done on me, doing therapy in somatic ways and group ways and spiritual ways. And I was, I had for the first time a live Buddhist teacher. And I hadn't worked with like a live teacher that you work with all the time on a regular basis. Every week I met with my teacher. Every day I was in my meditation practice and in groups doing group dynamic therapy and gestalt therapy. And what happened was this, massive shatter of that holding, of that layer of numbness, of just the getting by kind of feeling, but struggling on the inside. And man, it was a dark night in the sense that I had anxiety. I didn't sleep for 3 months. It was really intense of a shattering, and couldn't have been more beautiful and gorgeous to be again at Naropa, where I was getting built up from the foundation. Like I was getting a whole new foundation set into my being as I shattered. So it was, this like divine grace of synergy for where I could then move forward. And from there, I went into private practice, but I had always studied, spirituality as a kid. I became a coach too in my early 20s. Again, before coaching was really a thing. It was like this holistic coaching program, which was beautiful. But I just love self-growth, but I also have, this amazing, like eye for what are we doing with the energy body? How are we working with the energy? Because, we can't work with just the mind. We can't just talk to the head. Like we have to work with the somatic body, with the intelligence of our emotions. And we have to discharge this nervous system that has been holding like a record of every single thing that we have undergone, good and bad, but mostly the nervous system hangs on to things because they get locked or blocked or stuck in our system, and they become a place of non-resilience, right? Where we can't breathe through something, move through something, we start to hold the places of triggers, right? So at the time as well, kind of culminating, I was becoming a Kundalini yoga teacher, and I was studying Tantra. Tantra as a path of a meditation of union within, right? I have more of a meditation, kind of secular way of being with Tantra. And these practices also taught me to like be in joy, be in love. Like our greatest healing mechanism is to find and connect with the deepest resource of divine love, of unity, of that otherworldly, outside of our matrix kind of experience, so how do we get there? We have to alter our state to get there, essentially, because our state of mind in this culture is so it's just so locked into something that isn't actually what I would call truth or reality. It's like we see these things going on, these people moving in these ways, speaking to each other, relating in the ways that we do in this culture. And it's like, that is the dream, and it's like the coming to the truth and reality is actually when we can expand our vision, our mind, and see the multidimensionality of and the energies, and um, see how much of our life is really divinely planned, but how conformity and safety and fear has controlled us so fucking much, right? So like, what is our path to freedom is, like, I started to see that, like, in a healing way, we have to use these meditations. I mean, I've gone the gamut of exploring every way you can alter your state of mind, um, and use that therapeutically to free myself of fear and control. And and of course I'm not like totally free of it, like I don't know if I ever will be, but yeah, I've tried my hardest to
Part of being
become,
human. Yeah.
absolutely right,
Evolution.
like
We're wired for that as humans.
we're,
Yeah.
we just are where we are, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's like really building the path to sovereignty, and what that truly means for us. So yeah. And then I've added things like breath work, and I 5 years ago found transformational breath work and did all the trainings in that, and became uh, a research subject actually. And one of the like, I think, I don't know if there's not much research on breath work, but this teacher that I was working with at the time, she wanted to do research on breath work, and I got to be the subject of breathing for an hour once a day for 10 days straight, doing transformational open mouth circular breathing. And I did brain scans at the beginning and at the end, at the beginning and end of one session. And then we did it after 10 days and 10 sessions. And the results were so incredibly phenomenal that I would never not have breath work as a part of my practice again. One of the things, just to speak to this really quickly, in case anyone has this kind of stuff going on, is I have an autoimmune disorder. I have Hashimoto's of the thyroid. And the woman who was doing the brain scan, pulled me aside and said, Alana, do you know that you have this? And I said, yeah, I've kind of self-diagnosed myself after many, many misdiagnoses, going to doctors. Chronically, they don't know what's going on. Everyone says I'm fine, yet I'm chronically fatigued. All my hair is falling out. I'm cold all the time. My digestion is shit. And she said, yeah, you've got your brain scan lights up just like Hashimoto's. So, here's where your brain was, and it shows us through inflammation in the brain at the beginning, and here's where it was at the end. And it had gone down 80%. 80%.
Wow.
Like, yeah, it was absolutely phenomenal. I mean, just for the physiological effects, never mind the traveling the multiverse and being with ancestors and the visions and the dreams and the creativity that comes from breath work. But that was just really phenomenal for taking down inflammation in the body. It can be, a very deep healer. So anyway, now on my path, I started traveling about 5 years ago. I had a private practice in Denver, Colorado for 7 years as a therapist in an office, and that was amazing, and teaching Kundalini, giving workshops, and I just really loved my life there. Lots of friends in live music, and yet I was getting to that point where I felt the stagnation coming again. It was like that same stagnation that had been in my relationship. Very different now, very different, but it was this almost more, rather than needing to learn through massive stagnation and feeling uncomfortable, I now was kind of at that point where the signals were coming in through synchronicities. And the synchronicities were now telling me, like, it's time for Bali. Like, you've got to move there. And they were not subtle, not at all. Like, it was loud. And I've had a retreat business for, 15 years, and I'd run 5 different retreats in Bali. I knew Bali, but this was a different calling. Like, this was, you need to like close down your private practice, go there for months at a time. And I did that one time. It was so scary. I thought it was the biggest deal to take 4 months and go somewhere else and go to Bali. It was the biggest deal at the time. It's like, I look back, I'm like, oh, that's so cute. Because those 4 months, then turned into the rest of my life. I came back after 4 months, completely changed, and knew that like sitting in an office was no longer the way for me, that I needed to be like doing more experiential, more groups, more healing facilitation. I also am an intuitive and, work with spirit, and this is, this comes alive when you work with land, when you work with like the spirits of land and sacred vortexes around the world. So from there, I traveled for quite some time, and was in Europe, doing a lot of the Mary Magdalene kind of lineage and the Rose lineage, stone circles, castles, Glastonbury, and running retreats, walking that land, and living half the time in Bali. And so, yeah, I've been running retreats and kind of going all over, but in this time of like a whole new level of my missionary kind of commitment to source, and how can I serve the divine feminine and women, and really draw through the deepest healing knowledge that I can give, and the deepest healing knowledge that I can channel for others. So now I have programs and containers for like group containers, private containers, and then I give retreats and workshops, and it's finally like retreat season again. So I mean, I gave one last year, but it was a long 2 years without retreats or workshops. I just adore them, and it's so beautiful to work online. But at the same time, there's that really, component of the live experience too, when we go to a sacred vortex and we work on the land, and, that's just like, can't be missed either. So I get to go to Hawaii in September this year for the retreat. So that's super exciting. Yeah. So that's my story. I kind of went through my entire story.
No, you did. And you know what? It was fantastic because I mean, it was so fantastic that you just shared so openly, and I love that. I barely felt like I had to ask anything, and there's just so much I would love to unpack from what you shared. But I also want to be respectful of our time too. And I, would really love to, there's actually 2 things. One is going back to the beginning of when you started sharing about that initial awakening and what truth felt like for you. I'd love for you to elaborate on that a little bit, because, there are always people waking up, so to speak, in the world, but it's happening even more so, over the last couple of years. But because of the societal and transgenerational programming, a lot of people, when they're having those experiences, they question their own truth. So what would be your advice for someone to really be able to connect at a deeper level with their truth, to really ground into their truth?
That is such a good question, because I think this is one of the like stepping stones of starting to trust ourselves. This is like one of our, deepest wounds, is that we really aren't in tune and in touch with our own intuition, our gut feeling, right? And how do you decipher the gut feeling from a trauma response?
Mm-hmm.
I talk about that a lot in my work, because some people are like, no, I have to do this because I feel, they're like, no, I feel so strongly about it. I'm like, well, that's your anxiety
Where's it
actually
coming
pushing
from?
you
Yeah.
towards that, right?
Yeah.
Is that your anxiety, or is that truly like just a, when you feel lit up about something, it feels like a relaxation in your body,
Mm-hmm.
right? There's patience around it. There's a deeper knowing, but there's a relaxation and an excitement. So this is one way to really decipher like what's a yes, or what's a the universe kind of telling you something that's trustable. And when it's I have to act on it right away because I think it's going to get me what I want, right? And there's a tension to it. There's
Mm-hmm.
you can kind of feel that, like there's a
The resistance.
contraction
Yeah.
in it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's a no. That's like, that's coming from my anxiety, or from my mind. Let's say that. It doesn't always need to be anxiety, but there's, the deciphering mind from intuition.
Mm-hmm.
Intuition speaks like in whispers.
Mm-hmm.
It's not always a loud thing. It whispers to your heart. And so to catch that whisper, one of the things that I'm a huge proprietor of is having a daily practice where, I mean, literally, if you want to do 2 minutes and light an incense and put it on a altar, or put it in the plant that you have, and just take one deep breath and
Mm-hmm.
just say, like, how do I feel today? And scan the body. And then just notice the sensations in your body. And if you're kind of beyond that, you're like, yeah, I have time for 5 minutes. I have time for 20 minutes. Like, I'm into this, because I have a feeling the people on your podcast are pretty into this.
Yes. Yeah.
Right.
A lot of them have practices. Yes. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, just have a morning practice that allows you,
Mm-hmm.
or whatever, nighttime practice, whatever it is, to take your breath, slow it down, but then track your sensations in your body, right? So that can be a very kind of big like switch for people, because meditation is, half the time we're just trying to get out of our head, right? And
Mm-hmm.
trying to get out of the thoughts. And if you're spending your whole time doing that, like, fine, but it might not get you the results that you want. My suggestion is do some shaking, do some movement, do some dance, like just shake your body and breathe. Right? Your body, your nervous system likes to have some movement, some somatic movement, and some breath, connecting it with breath and fun, and like something just, let's just shake off anger. Let's just shake off frustration or tightness from the day. Or maybe you had a really fun day and you're just like, hey, let's dance into joy. But get your body moving, and then allow your body from the movement to kind of have like landing gear into stillness. So have a little shake, have a little breathe, and then have a sit, and then track the sensations in your body, because those are the felt sense. Those are the
Mm-hmm.
emotions. Those are feelings. Emotions are actually sensations in your body, felt like physical sensations. So if you can feel and tap into physical sensations, the physicality of energy, even, right? Then you're not telling a story about it. Right? So we
I
don't
love
want
that.
to evaluate the sensations or feelings or emotions. So I really like, that's a big thing. Don't evaluate it by telling it a story or why it's there or where it came from that day. You have to take all of that out. And this is a practice. This is a life-changing practice, actually. Take all of that out and just be with, oh, that sensation feels like tingling and lightness. That one feels like a contraction in my belly and heavy. I'm going to just take my focus and go into that. I'm going to go into that heavy contraction and just be with it. And most of the time when we go into it and focus on it, it then loosens or dissipates, or it shifts or changes because it
Mhm.
has our presence, has our awareness. So that's the way of actually feeling your feelings, to allow them to dissipate rather than just separating ourselves from our feelings and trying to kind of like bypass them or numb out to them. We have to experience them for them to leave our body. We have to complete these stress cycles in our body. So, I mean, that's a whole practice, but if there's someone starting, the best way to listen to your intuition is to do that, move, shake, go into stillness, scan the body. And from that non-evaluative state, start to listen to what's really there. And that's where you hear the whisper of the heart.
I love that so much. I love that you really focus on being in the body, because I feel like you know, largely still in the personal development industry and the spiritual community, a lot of what's out there is really still more heavily focused, I think, on, like the upper chakras and being in the head
Mm-hmm.
and everything. And it's really easy to spend more time in that place. So I love that you bring that up. What about, because some people have claircognizance,
Mm-hmm.
so they just know.
Mm-hmm.
And how would you relate that in terms of what you were talking about in terms of feeling into the body? Like if someone just has that knowing.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So again, like if someone has a knowing,
Mm-hmm.
I would actually practice feeling, what does having a knowing feel like,
Love
right?
that.
Because
Yeah.
right, because we always want to bring it back and anchor it back into the body. The body actually is having a sensorial, neurological connection experience while you're having a knowing, an intuitive
Mm-hmm.
hit, right? And so you want to actually like just notice, what state am I in when I have this
In that
knowing,
knowing. I love that.
right? And then,
Yeah.
and can I anchor that and trust that state more and more? And then what we can do is come back to that state of being, because I've anchored it in a physical sensation, and I can start to expand that, so I can spend more of my time in a state of knowing more of the time.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
We work with body states, body frequency, like these kind of templates for us to then expand more of the ones that we want to be in, and dissipate the ones that we do not want to be in, not by skipping them, but by actually moving into them, feeling them, and then we
Mm-hmm.
start to get quicker and faster at that process, so they cycle through
Thank
without
you.
us putting resistance there. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you
Does
so
that
much.
make sense?
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
it makes total sense. Thanks so much for clarifying that. Alana, if someone wants to reach out to you to connect with you, where is the best place for them to go?
You know, my Instagram is fun. It has a lot of writing and videos, and you can find me. My handle is just at Alana Warlop. And my website is another wonderful place and resource, and you can jump on a newsletter. And I'm also going to give you a link for a free 20-minute breathwork experience. It's like a breathwork activation, a heart opening breathwork activation. I call it de-armoring the heart. So we can kind of take down the walls and the numbness that we have built up over kind of energetically and physically in our heart center. And so it's a small breathwork practice that people can start to use at home. Because again, I'm so like, if everyone could just do a daily practice, you'll see how much your life will change if you can stay consistent with something. And this is one of those tools. So I'm happy to offer that to your listeners.
Thanks so much. That's so generous of you. And we will be sure to include those links for your website, for your gift, in the show notes for the listeners. And it's just been such a pleasure speaking with you today and having you on the show. I mean, I could talk to you for days about so many different topics.
Oh, thank you so much, Jennifer. I love that you're offering this and invited me on. So I'm super deeply honored.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks so much.
Thank you for listening to the Awaken on Purpose podcast. Please visit me and subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts or at awakenonpurpose.com so you never miss an episode. To learn more about how you can embody new levels of expansion in your purpose and mission as a visionary leader and way shower, visit me at jenniferspore.com.